And by the way, shame is the result of every negative thing that you see in the world is shame. Narcissism, shame, psychopathy, shame, every compulsive disorder, shame, anorexia, bulimia, depression, shame. All of the rootedness of this is inside of shame because it's binding. It binds you and I to making choices that we would never want to do. It binds you and I to making decisions, actions, choices, belief systems, being in relationship to certain people, accepting jobs that we would never normally want to take, but we feel inferior, so we will actually accept things with a lower standard, due and all because of shame. And shame is 100% the reason why you and I go back to porn.
You like this, you like being daddy's arms with microphones. You like being a worker. You're made for the camera. Both my boys are.
Hey, this video you are about to watch is a part of a series where I show you how to quit porn the right way. So do yourself a favor, binge on all of this content, all the videos that you possibly can, because who knows, maybe if the value and the trust is built together over this journey, you'll want to jump into a community that I call Fit for Family. Or maybe you think these videos suck, and that's also fair too. But nonetheless, there's only one way for us to find out. So enough of me, let's get back to serving you and let's get back to the video. We need to have a conversation right now about arguably one of the most important and pivotal concepts when becoming porn free. And the topic is all about shame. Now, I know that there are so many people that could communicate this better than I can. There's books on it. There are people that have given their life and study and dedication to shame and the power of it and what it's done in our lives. But I want to make this a very concentrated, potent, at least that's my goal, conversation with you on shame for Christians who struggle with porn and understanding the power that shame has had. I think we all know what shame is in some contexts, but very few of us know how to define it, because shame, we would think, is similar to like guilt, condemnation, all that. It's just all one of the yucky emotions or things that we experience, but it's actually really, really different, and it's way more sinister. See, the difference between shame and guilt is that guilt and condemnation, for example, focus on what you did. They say what you did is bad. I can't believe you did that. What you did right there was a bad thing. That's guilt. But shame, on the other hand, always attacks our identity. Shame is an identity statement where it says you are bad. The thing that you did isn't just what you did, it's now who you are. So instead of going to porn and being like, I made a bad choice, you'd say, I am bad. Instead of saying, I screwed up, that would be guilt. You now make it an identity of, I am a screw up. That's shame. And what's really fascinating here that I want you to understand, I want you to kind of pull back the curtain, get behind the matrix, is that shame is at the forefront of every single relapse that you ever have when you go back to porn. Shame is at the epicenter of every single unwanted outburst, behavior, or cycle in your life that you and I, as believing believers, people who want to have a relationship with God, want settled. And in order to have that thing settled with shame, we have to understand it. We got to know where it came from, how it came to be true in our life, and then we can start to talk about how to overcome it. But first and foremost, a lot of people think that porn creates shame, and it doesn't. Porn exposes shame. See, what happens in our life is that you and I get triggered by something, inevitably, that makes us feel less than, inferior, inadequate, overwhelmed, where we want to numb out that pain, but still get love and connection, because we need it. It's the way we're wired. And so what we do is we feel shame. We feel crappy. And as a result, we want to make crappy decisions and crappy choices, right? Because we always want to make decisions that are in alignment with our perception of our identity. And so when we do that, we end up already knowing and feeling shame. Maybe there was rejection, you didn't get texted back by someone yelled at you, you feel shame. You feel shame over some part of your identity, and you think it's about who you are. And then you go to porn to self-medicate, and then all you do is experience more of what you were already feeling to begin with. It's not true that porn creates shame, is that it manifests and personifies the shame that you're already feeling. See, porn simply makes you feel more of the way that you already were. If you felt disconnected and lonely, you go to porn you're going to feel even more disconnected and even more lonely. But what's more powerful than just understanding that this is all a shame cycle is we need to figure out where the heck this even came from, because most people are very, very disconnected from their childhoods, from their upbringings, from their formative years, and understanding and seeing how it played a really vital role. Here's an interesting idea for you. I can't remember who said it, but let's just say someone way smarter than me, which isn't hard to say. Pretty much everyone is. But that being said, there's someone who said that in terms of successful parents, successful parenting, that there's one differentiating factor that makes parents truly successful with raising kids. Now, I'd love for you to guess and venture what it is. We could throw out our ideas. Do we think it's parents who have money, parents who went on vacations with their kids, parents who maybe brought their kids into extracurricular activities, parents who gave their kids an allowance, parents who made their kids do chores growing up? I don't know. What would you guess? Well, I'll tell you. What they found out is that the greatest parents, the best parents, with kids that grow up to have better, healthier, more successful lives, is that the parents had a very unique understanding of their own family dynamic, their history, and their childhood upbringing. And that the parents who had the best awareness of their own personal formative years became the best parents because they were able to influence, shift, and change it. But most people don't. Most people repeat the pattern. Most people continue to be the generational curse and generational trauma that gets passed down, 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 and down until someone's brave enough to have to deal with it. And I believe that person's absolutely you. But from understanding the perspective on shame, we need to understand how shame and trauma are very, very linked. Because when a kid's growing up, we're going to go back. We're going to go back to the beginning, because shame happens when you're young. And the reason why I want to go here is because you didn't just wake up one day and be like, hey, dude, I'm just going to hate myself. I'm just going to shame myself. I'm just going to think I'm a pathetic, loser that's not going anywhere. That's not the way this works. You came out of the womb. You're birthed through your mama. I'm not going to do the whole birds and bees convo, but you came out of your mama, and guess what? You did not have shame. You did not experience any shame whatsoever. You actually felt like all of your needs were going to be met. You felt like you were going to be loved, taken care of. There's enough milk. There's enough food. There's enough resources. There's enough love. There's enough cuddles, snuggles, blankets, warmth, all of it. Enough sleep, all for me. All for me. That's exactly what you thought. I thought the same thing. Every single human being on the planet. You come out and there's just an abundance of being taken care of. But somewhere along the way, the timeline of my life, your life, and what went on in your history, you got a different message. You got a cue, a memo. You got an experience with shame, an experience with this sense of, I'm not enough as I am. I'm doing something that's upsetting to people. I'm getting in trouble. I'm getting yelled at. And by the way, shame is the result of every negative thing that you see in the world is shame. Narcissism, shame, psychopathy, shame, every compulsive disorder, shame, anorexia, bulimia, depression, shame. All of the rootedness of this is inside of shame because it's binding. It binds you and I to making choices that we would never want to do. It binds you and I to making decisions, actions, choices, belief systems, being in relationship to certain people, accepting jobs that we would never normally want to take, but we feel inferior, so we will actually accept things with a lower standard, due and all because of shame. And shame is 100% the reason why you and I go back to porn. If we had to distill it down and get rid of the nuts and bolts and all the fluff language, and you had to break this whole program down into one little segment, I would be communicating about shame in it. I couldn't not. I'd have to explain that the power of shame is so strong in every single person's life who's struggling with porn, and that's why. It's that we have a very low perception of our own worthiness and lovability meter. But in order to break free from porn, which means breaking free from shame, you actually need to believe the inverse, the reverse, that we're lovable and that we are worthy and that we are deserving of more, of a better life, of more connection, of belonging, all the things that we feel like were hijacked from us at a young age. And here's why. Because when we were kids and we're growing up and we caught the wrong memo, maybe, for example, you saw mom and dad go through a divorce, or you got yelled at, or you got mistreated by like a friend. Kids have a very difficult time rationalizing. You know, it says that our brain's not fully developed until we're like, 25 years old or 26 years old. I think they're increasing it every year. It's like for men specifically. Women is much earlier on. You guys are very smart and intuitive. But for men specifically, they're like saying, okay, now it's 28 and then it's going to be 30. And they just keep raising the ante on when a man's brain's fully developed. But especially for a kid, kids lack perspective. They lack awareness. They don't have the full spectrum of information on what's going on. They're entering into an already evolving story. You ever been to a movie and you're jumping into the middle of the film and you're kind of like, what's going on? You want to ask questions, but everyone's just like, shh, stop talking. Like, don't say anything. Like, we're not going to go back. You're just figure it out. And you're like totally lost and confused. And if that's not happened to you, you can at least run with the idea of what would happen when you jump into a movie where there's a plot, there's a problem, there's characters, there's a development, there's something going on. And you're like, I'm seeing things right now. And you're like, I have no clue what I'm really watching. Maybe it was like something grandma had on TV or your parents. The reason why I'm bringing that up is because that's exactly what it's like for us as kids when we get born into our families with our parents, with our mom and dad. Our mom and dad, however old they were when they had us, already had a life story going on, a movie that was in the middle of being filmed. And we jumped in as an added character to a plot that was already being developed for a very, very long time. Even beyond the ages of our mom and dad or primary caregivers, whoever formed us, shaped us, and groomed us, their parents with the same thing happened. Your parents, my parents, were born into a story that was already evolving. And the reason why we get trapped is because our parents, doing the best they know how, didn't know the narrative, the explanation, the plot, the whole storyline of what their parents were going through. So now they're rolling with the punches on things that they didn't sign up for. Maybe dad's an alcoholic, and the baby who's coming into this family is not like, all right, we're acutely aware dad drinks alcohol, dad will get pissed, and dad's doing it not because he hates us, but because he hates himself. Nobody's thinking that way. So when dad gets abusive, dad gets loud, dad gets destructive, and he starts breaking things or yelling, and he starts shaming you, not by saying, I'm shaming you, but by his behavior, you feel unsafe, you feel threatened, and you feel like there is something intrinsically wrong or bad about you, because ultimately, why would the person that you love the most and that's meant to love you the most be the most unsafe human for you in this moment? We internalize it. And so this is why kids are so fragile, is because kids are almost narcissistic. And I don't mean that in a term to say that they really, really are, but the idea of narcissism is that it's all about you. It's self-absorption. And there's a lot more to it than that, trust me, but just at a base level where it's self-focused, self-imposed, all about the self, and kids are like that, and that's not a bad thing. And the reason why is because they are trying to figure out their identity. Little kids are always trying to figure out where they belong in the world. Who are you and who am I? It's actually really interesting, but when a baby is born, and while it's a newborn, for the first 3 months, a baby looks at its mom and thinks that that is them. There is no distinction. It's actually so cute and adorable and beautiful that a baby sees no difference when it looks at its primary caregiver, when it looks at mom, and between itself, it thinks it's the same human. So that's why there can be a lot of separation or anxiety, and babies crying, and it's like, I just want mom, just want to feed, just want to sleep, just want to be all around mom. When a new baby's born, is because of the separation of self. And a baby's just like, hey, wait, where did I just go? And it gets so happy and excited when it sees mom again, and it doesn't start to develop a sense of autonomy and self until about 3 months old, after it's done being a newborn. So with kids, when you start to grow up and you're like, okay, I'm not mom anymore, we're not the same human, who am I? I'm trying to figure it out. Kids don't have the ability to rationalize, reason, to be able to put things into perspective, and that's the nature of trauma. The nature of trauma is that you went through an event in life absent of divine wisdom, perspective, and understanding of knowing that you are safe and that you are unconditionally loved. And so when two parents, for maybe a more extreme example that unfortunately might be your story, where two parents get divorced, obviously there was a narrative going on before the baby was born. Things weren't all right. There was tension, there was arguments, there was disconnect. Mom and dad weren't all that great. But when a kid is growing up in that story, they don't know how to say, oh, daddy has his own abandonment issues, and that's why he drinks. And mommy has all these control issues because of her abandonment issues. So that's why she yells and freaks out or is super passive and shut down. A kid does not know how to say that. So because a kid's trying to figure out its identity, it's trying to figure out where it's safe, where it belongs in the world, you and I start taking on the events around us as though they are about us. So we say mom and dad must be fighting because of me. Because I'm bad. I did something wrong. I must have done something in order for mom and dad to be frustrated right now. Or if mom, let's just say, was tired, didn't get a good night's sleep, she hasn't been taking time for herself, like a lot of moms don't, unfortunately. I'm not saying it's right or good. I don't think it's good at all. Moms ought to take time for themselves and have supportive networks and structures for them. But let's just say this mom didn't, and then a kid's just saying, mommy, 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 mommy. Like, can you color with me? Can you draw with me? And let's just say the mom snaps, stop it. Like, what are you talking about? Like, stop asking me to do something with you. I'm not going to. It became a level 10 scenario for a level 1 question from the child. And the kid, confused, scared, overwhelmed, starts to shut down. And that shutdown that happens for a child is due to shame. And you see that happen through, and again, the mom can maybe apologize after or just say, sorry, like, what do you want? Or maybe not even apologize and never make amends with the kid over it. But the kid starts to internalize that and attach themselves to an identity that says they are bad, they're not good, they must be the source of all the pain in mom's life and dad's life or in somebody else's life. And what they start doing is growing up with this complex that says, I don't get to receive love unconditionally anymore. And in order for me to be loved, I need to do something in order to acquire it because it's not unconditionally and readily and safely available for me. So then kids start to get really creative, finding ways of getting attention, even negatively, because if you don't get positive attention as a child, there's a lot of kids out there who will get negative attention, where it's like you could call them a problem child, and they have outbursts or this, that, and the other. And it's like they're not bad kids, but really what they're trying to do is trying to get attention. They're trying to get a sense of significance and connection because when they're quiet and passive, I know I identify with this. I was a back burner child where I didn't really get much attention growing up. My older brother did because he caused a lot more of a ruckus and a lot more of a scene. And because I didn't want to rock the boat, I just tried to stay quiet and happy. And so my mom was always like, oh, you cause no problems, you're fine. But as a result of that, it's not that I didn't cause problems. She's right, I didn't really. But the truth is I was really shut down. I was in a lot of shame. I was very passive. I was very quiet. I was very absent. I felt like I didn't matter. I didn't exist. And so I was quiet, not because it's who I authentically am. I'm very loud. I'm very boisterous. I have a big personality. But I operated out of a huge sense of shame most of my childhood because I didn't want to rock the boat. And I didn't want to make anybody upset, or I didn't want to make anybody mad. And different situations and scenarios would help remind me of that. Be like, oh, yep, you got excitable and happy. I remember one time for one of my birthday parties as a kid, I got really excited when my friends showed up. I was probably 4, maybe 5 years old. It was like a clown birthday party, and one of my friends showed up. It was the first person to arrive, and I was just so excited. I had a lot of energy like a kid would for his birthday. And I remember, and again, this isn't anything to vilify my mom, my parents. I can have compassion that they just didn't have capacity or tools or an understanding of how shame worked. So, and again, and their parents didn't, and their parents, so it goes on and on and on. But this is why it's so important, because I got really excited my friend was there. And I remember still very vividly my mom scolding me and just saying, stop that. Like, don't do that. And made me just feel like I was dumb. And I felt like I was bad and like an idiot and like, what did I do wrong? I didn't really understand what I did wrong. And that's the thing with children, is we don't know how to separate whether what we did from who we are. So there's a lot of confusion. And there's walking on eggshells. And I didn't have it explained to me like, hey, like, I love the energy. Maybe, because looking back, I can create the perspective, oh, why would my mom do that? Probably because I was hyper. I was jumping up and down, probably had a lot of chocolate, a lot of candy. And my mom's probably like, hey, stop that. Your friend's in the middle of the door. Let him come through, and his mom, so that they can actually come into the party. But it didn't get communicated that way because my mom could have been experiencing shame herself. She could have been triggered, and her sense of shame is just like, well, here's my kid. They're just trying to come, and my boy's being hyper. He's not being controlled. He's not a good kid. And if he's not being a good boy, then it maybe reflects my parenting and me being a bad mom. So she just quick militant on me. And again, I don't think that she did it because she hated me or mad at me, nothing like that. But because we never had those conversations and really talking about it, and she never explained to me anything like that, it became a very difficult moment for me, and that led on to more and more and more and more and more of those throughout my entire life. And to be honest, that's probably like the most benign and simple example I could give of me experiencing shame when I was a child. It became more and more and more escalated, but I always just assumed then that I was bad. And so as a result, because you and I have a God-given need for connection, to be able to receive love, we're going to try to find it in ways that we can control. And so porn becomes the object of why so many of us want to be able to experience comfort, love, but in a controlled, safe environment, because you know that you're not going to be rejected, hurt, betrayed, abandoned, criticized, judged, all those sorts of things. But shame is at the epicenter of it all. And so this shame complex really does begin when you and I are children. And it's all about our identity every single time. And the reason why the gospel is so important is because what Jesus does is he came with the message of salvation to reverse it. Now, of course, I want us to understand what shame is. I could talk this one for probably a lot more hours, and I have so much more that I'd want to contribute and say on that. But it's really, really important that at the brunt of every toxic cycle is the cycle of shame, is the place of I'm bad. Again, you don't go to porn, and we've made porn the epicenter of like, I need to break free from porn. And I'm like, really, dude? You don't. It's a byproduct. It'll cure itself. It will naturally disappear as you become an emotionally healthy man. It will naturally disappear. Porn will break from your life as you become an emotionally healthy woman or man of God, and you focus on breaking the shame. And you break the shame by, at a heart level, being able to first, this is huge, just understanding this is massive. Again, the best parents are the ones with an awareness of their upbringing, an awareness of what went on in their childhood dynamic, because as you can start to pull apart these layers of shame for yourself, you can start to see where they came into effect, maybe what mom did, what dad did. And again, most of this is non-intentional. It's not deliberate. I guarantee you, if I were to talk to my mom and have that conversation, like, hey, remember my birthday party when I was 4 or 5? It was a clown party. And she'll be like, yeah, maybe. Maybe we look through the photo album and look through pictures. I'd be like, yeah, well, you shame me here. And of course, she would never say, I shamed you. No one's being deliberate. But energetically, spiritually, emotionally, that's what's happening for a kid. And so what ends up happening, again, when you don't believe that you can receive love unconditionally as you are, you start to think that you need to do things to receive it. And because nobody can ultimately give us the amount of love that we believe we're wanting through our efforts and achievement, we continue on a rat race where we're doing all these things over and over and over again in order to try to be loved. You'll see it through every single form. I myself personally didn't get to the root issues that I needed to when I was struggling with shame, when I tried to quit porn. So after I quit porn, I went into ministry. And I thought that if I, and again, subconscious in the background of my mind, that if I did evangelism, led people to the Lord, created salvation, brought people to Jesus, prayed for people on the streets, did all this sort of thing, that I would be enough. If I could just do all this stuff for God. And that's why Jesus said, many will come to me on that day and say, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy? Did we not cast out demons? Did we not raise the dead, heal the sick? Did we not do all those things in your name? And he said, away from me. Who are you? I don't know you. Away from me, you workers of evil. And it's not that they weren't passionate. It's not that they weren't sold out. It's not that they weren't on fire for God. It's that he said, I never knew you. Jesus said this, I never knew you. And you know that word knew, K-N-E-W, in the Greek, is actually the root word yada, Y-A-D-A. And to yada in the Greek is to have a deep, intimate experience and encounter with someone. That's what it meant to know someone. That's why in the Bible it said Adam knew Eve. He entered into her and he knew Eve in Genesis, in the Garden of Eden. That word knew is yada. It's also the same word that Jesus is describing when he said, I never knew you. He says, away from me. You did all these things, sure, on the outside of the cup, on the outside here, but I never knew you. I never knew the inside. You were filled with shame. Dude, you were filled with this image, with the sense that you were trying to impress me through your works externally, but I didn't actually know the heart. I didn't know who you really were. I had no intimate connection to you. I had no deep and profound experience with you. You didn't actually allow me into your shame, into your mess, into your pain, into your baggage, and to allow me to really love on you here where it mattered most. You came to me with your walls, your armor, your accolade, your sword, and you showed me how good of a fighter you were, but I didn't get to see the weak, small, betrayed orphan on the inside. And you had all these external walls that said, if you just did that, then maybe you'd be lovable. That he's like, but you need to leave your armor at the door. You need to let it go. You need to get off your horse, because in my house, there's only sons and daughters. There's no heroes. There's no warriors. I want you to come before me like the woman with the issue of blood, like the woman who was caught in adultery. I want you to come before me in humility, laying down your armor, getting it fully off you in every single form, and just laying naked before me. You came into this world naked. You're going to leave this world naked. And in order to commune with me, there needs to be nakedness in your heart where you actually let out that shame and you call it out. You see it. But it's not going to happen unless we reflect and we figure out all the areas in our life where we have been truly experiencing shame and experiencing a disconnect in our walk with God. Shame is the root of it all. Shame is actually the original sin. That's why Adam and Eve, once they ate of the tree, of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, right? They ate from that fruit of that tree, they were ashamed. Shame is always the byproduct. It's always the root cause. It's always the thing that God's been trying to get in and away from our lives. And shame is the reason why they covered themselves with fig leaves. They knew that they were naked, and God's like, who told you you were naked? Like, how did you have an awareness? And so what shame did, immediately you sinned, they ate from the fruit, it created shame, and it created an embarrassment and an awareness of things that they were never supposed to see. And so that's the insidious nature of shame, is it causes you and I to focus on something we were never meant to see. Adam and Eve, they were naked, they were in the garden, they were playing, they were having sex, they were being fruitful, let's just say multiplying, they were enjoying life, right? Obviously they didn't have kids until after they got kicked out, but you get the point here. They were doing all that in the garden, and then they sinned. Shame is the immediate byproduct. They start sewing up fig leaves, getting to work, covering themselves, working hard to cover themselves up. Tell me that's not the story of all of our lives. We work really, really, really hard to cover up, to hide, to have all these walls, these imposter versions, these masks, these pseudo versions of who we think we are. And God's just like, who told you? He said to Adam and Eve, he's like, who told you you were naked? How did you know? What God means by that is, how did you become aware of something that I never wanted you to be aware of? Your nakedness wasn't bad until you experienced shame that made it that way. And there was things about you and your identity that have been stolen and taken from you, that God was like, I never, ever had in my heart that you would experience that way. For me, is letting my light shine, is being me. Talking. I remember one time so vividly in school where I was talking and answering a question for a teacher, and there's these two boys in front of me, and they just made fun of me. I felt shame. They just ridiculed me because I was giving a thoughtful answer from my heart, just being me for the first time fully in this class in a new school I was going to. And these two boys in front are like, wow, he's passionate. Yikes. And then they started laughing amongst themselves and like, dude, this guy needs to slow down and other things like that. And I felt so much shame. And I was like, okay, duly noted. Don't ever speak again in class. And I didn't. I didn't apply myself. I didn't contribute. I didn't show up. I let shame get to the better of me. And God is essentially saying, who told you? Who gave you a reference that thing about you that I put in you that is beautiful, that is holy, that it's a catalyst for vulnerability and healing? Who told you that that's bad? I didn't tell you that that's bad. Where does that come from? And that's exactly why, for me, in my life, I'm so passionate about educating people on shame and helping guys quit porn, because porn, it's not why you're here. It's why you think you might be here, but there's a whole journey of excavation in the heart of God that we need to go on. And it gets more and more and more, I don't want to say easier, but it gets more and more and more freeing when we allow ourselves to open this up. And in effect, it does get easier. I mean, the road definitely gets easier as we go along, but I don't want to put it from a frame of like easy as in it becomes like a no-brainer, like a cakewalk. There's still effort. There's still things we need to work through. But most people never get free because we're too busy behavior modifying. And then we say things like, hey, you just need to pray this away. You just need to serve this one away. You just need to fast this one away. I'm like, but we're really disconnected with our shame. And then we have parents that are in church, that are pastors, and I don't mean any shame or judgment by this. I mean, far from it. My whole goal is to break shame. I'm not trying to contribute it. But then we grow up and we're in churches with people and families who like their spouses look good on the outside and then they're yelling and angry at each other at home after, or the pastor is then struggling with depression, or this minister goes and has an affair, and it happens more and more and more. You've seen it through so many people. You know, you could look at Carl Lentz, for example, the old former pastor of Hillsong in New York, not dogging him. He made the choices that he did. But 4 years later, he's coming out on a podcast of his own with his wife, Laura, saying how he's been getting into therapy and counseling for 4 years now, chronically, since that affair came out and since they lost everything. He lost the trust of his kids, of his wife, of his family, of his congregation. He lost his job. There was a severance. There was a huge blowout. He broke the trust and hurt so many people. But really, it was shame. He needs to take responsibility over it. Otherwise, he'll never break free. We can't remain a victim to it. But he's even acknowledging and admitting to himself in his podcast and other things that he's communicating that shame was massive. He had so much bondage. He had so much sense of shame in his life that he didn't know, and so much sexual brokenness about who he was and performance, because shame will even cause you to be a big performer where you think you got to be big and boastful and elaborate. And again, it's not a version of you. And that's why so many celebrities you see end their life or end up in drugs and alcohol and addiction themselves, is because shame is the driving force for so many of us in our life. Again, I don't want this to be an exhaustive, video for you. I know that this is pretty deep, and shame can be and feel like a very heavy subject. So hopefully this can help you understand just the beginnings of shame. We could talk about this for hours and hours and hours, but I do believe the best parents, the best leaders have an awareness of their own background, awareness of their own history, because once you're aware of it, then you can begin to change it. And so this I just wanted to give, not necessarily as a food for thought, but as an invitation for you to start to explore the areas in your life where you've been experiencing shame, where it's come from for you, key situations or scenarios that have left you to feeling like you're unworthy, you're not good enough, because it's the shame that's binding us again, that's pushing us back to porn. And the only hope that we have of breaking free from porn truly is by obliterating shame. And it's helpful to know where it's come from so you can have more compassion on your story, because when we're all little kids, trauma is almost a given for every kid, because the nature of trauma is that we miss out on rational understanding and feeling safe and feeling loved. And that's just a kid, because we don't have all the things put together. And so almost every single one of us have felt some form of big trauma in our life, emotionally, like literally, it could be mentally, verbally, over and over again, because we didn't understand that everything that we went through wasn't because of us. It was because of mom, because of dad, and their own issues that weren't resolved. So my heart and my goal for you inside of this program is that you begin to start that journey, start the conversation, start resolving these things for you, so you can break this generational pattern, break the generational curse and trauma, so it doesn't have to keep on continuing. I hope this serves you. I hope this helps. You can replay this if you need. I know it was a mouthful, but I share this because I love you so much. I want to see shame broken from your life, and I believe the rest of this program that we have in store for you is going to help you do exactly that. I love you so much, and I'll catch you in the next one. Hey, real quick, if you like that video that you just saw, or if you want to see even better videos than this in a series that I made called Annihilate Porn to help guys or girls like you quit porn, you can subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't forget any alerts, comment, like, all that jazz, and more importantly, check out the next video that's going to take you even further on the journey from where you are to where you want to be. I love you tons. I'll catch you in the next one.